you own it. Let every mile bring a smile, yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of the Road to Life podcast with Meredith and Craig. Today we're talking about forgiveness.
Forgiveness is a big one. I don't know that it's not one of the most effective tools in your arsenal, from not just in your relationship, but also in your whole life. I don't think it's something that we deploy strategically enough.
I know I never did ever consider forgiveness. I was more of a vengeance.
Justice.
Old me, if you wronged me, you were dead to me.
Yeah.
Forever. I just we're done here and moved on. With growth, I've now determined that that's probably not the best approach. That we're all humans, we make mistakes, we need to have grace and compassion. And the reason I didn't was I never had growth and compassion, or I never had grace and compassion for myself.
Right.
I was very hard on myself.
Right.
And I took those standards that I had for me and I applied them to everybody.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be perfect as well.
Yeah.
And if you wrong me, you're dead to me.
Yeah, and so that actually is probably a topic for a whole episode in and of itself,
Yeah.
is the expectations we have for ourselves and
Yes.
how we apply those to others, because I also have heard from multiple people, not just my own self-reflection, but heard from other people that I have a very high expectation of others. And so what we're talking about is when someone maybe doesn't meet your expectations or someone wrongs you in some way, how do you deal with that?
Right.
And you historically have been a revenge more than forgiveness kind of guy. I'm glad you're coming around on that.
Not so much revenge, like I would go out and try to hurt somebody, as much as, like, I loved the revenge type shows,
Yes,
though. Like,
yeah.
that's how I got my
Yeah.
my fill on the revenge side. I wasn't a vengeful person, like, I didn't go out and try to hurt people, but I would cut them out of my life. Like,
Yes.
wrong me, you're dead to me, we're done, let's move our separate ways.
And how did that impact you?
In what way?
Well, like, you've cut someone out of your life completely now because of one mistake.
Yeah, well, I lose that relationship. So
Right.
who knows really down the line how that really affects me long term, but I lose out on the opportunity to grow and have a relationship with that person.
Right, because what we're going to talk about in this episode is that forgiveness, and it's how I have historically looked at it and how I think you have also historically looked at it. Forgiveness is something that you bestow on someone that
Yes.
you think, do they deserve my forgiveness
Right.
or not? That's
100%.
how I always approached forgiveness. What did you do to me? And do you deserve my forgiveness, yes or no? That was the question I asked myself.
Yeah, 100%.
And in fact, that is the wrong question. I was asking absolutely 180 degree, couldn't have been more wrong of a question to myself. Because forgiveness is not something I give to you after you have wronged me. Forgiveness is not something I do for anybody else. Forgiveness I offer you is not for you. When I forgive you for the little ginger beard hairs in the sink, it's forgiveness I'm offering for myself.
Are we going back to those ginger beard hairs?
No, but they're a good thread to pull all the way through every episode. No, ginger beard hairs are not something that really warrants forgiveness conversation. When someone does something to you that hurts you, the question you ask yourself is not, do they deserve my forgiveness? But the forgiveness that you're offering is for your benefit. Because when you're holding on to the resentment, when you're holding on to the pain because you haven't forgiven that person, that hurts you. When you cut someone out of your life, that hurts you. It may also hurt the other person, but we're looking at how that hurts you. And so when you offer someone forgiveness, you're offering them forgiveness so that you can let it go. So that you can let go of the hurt, let go of the pain, let go of the resentment, and move forward in your life, not being held back by this situation or this person.
Past. You don't want to live in the past.
And not so it colors every experience you have in your life going forward.
Yeah.
Because often when we don't forgive someone, that pain, that hurt, that resentment, you wear that as a suit of armor, as your sunglasses, as all the things as you move through your life, so that everything you experience going forward, you experience through that experience and through that lens, and that changes literally every experience you have for the rest of your life. Because once you've been hurt, then putting yourself in a position to be hurt again is difficult for you if you haven't yet let go of that hurt.
Yeah. And I think another piece of this that we haven't really touched on yet, and that's probably the hardest part, is the forgiveness of your own past, your own mistakes, the things that you've done, not even forgiving other people. No one else is involved,
Yeah.
let's say.
Oof.
Those situations where you feel guilt or shame or something about your past that you've done, and letting go of that and forgiving yourself and understanding that you were just learning, you were just growing, you didn't know any better, you were doing the best you could with what you had, all those things, and letting that go and moving forward to everything you just said applies. But the other person, there is no other person, it's just you.
Yeah,
in this
releasing
situation.
yourself.
Yeah, from the past hurts and the wrongs or whatever you perceive as having been done by you.
And as hard as it can be to forgive someone who hurt you, because it's hard. Like there's no two ways about it. If you've been really hurt by someone, forgiving them is really challenging. And it takes work. It's not like you can just decide, I forgive you, and then boom, it's forgiven. Like there's some work required, and we'll dig into that in a minute. But it's hard enough to forgive someone else for what they've done to you. I believe it is infinitely harder to forgive yourself for something you've done, either to yourself or to someone else. But forgiving yourself is the hardest thing because, our running dialogue and the voices in our head, we know all the things to say to ourselves to make us feel the worst, to make us feel like we're a terrible person, that what we've done is terrible, that we don't deserve forgiveness. We can justify ourselves, make ourselves believe anything we want ourselves to believe. And that negative voice in our head often makes us believe that we don't deserve forgiveness. And so it is infinitely harder to forgive yourself because you know how to push your own buttons so well. And so forgiveness is always something that you do for you, whether you're forgiving someone else so that you can be free of it, or you're forgiving yourself so you can be free of it. No matter who you're forgiving,
it's for you.
It is for you. And don't you deserve to be free from that pain, free from that hurt, free from that resentment, free to leave that in the past so that you can move forward and
live in the now, be happier. Like that's where the happiness is in the now. And you want to build for the future. You don't want to live in the past. And that's really, if you're not forgiving, if you've got that unforgiveness inside you right now, that's where you're living. You're reliving past moments, past issues, past things that you just can't let go of. And forgiveness is the conduit to which you can let go of those things and move into the here and now and build for the future.
And in case you don't believe it yet, you deserve to let it go. You deserve to be free from all those things.
There is definitely a worthiness component to all of this.
Yes.
Like a lot of times we don't feel worthy to be forgiven, or we don't feel worthy to have the relationship, so we self-sabotage and we just, that was part of my problem. I know, is that you just self-sabotage, like I'm not worthy of having that great relationship or whatever it is, and then you just blow it up because of some perceived wrong that quite easily could have been just a human mistake that 99.9% of people would make, but you're holding them to this incredibly high standard that you hold for yourself because you're not worthy. Like it's just a mess of
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's what's going on inside you half the time. It's insane.
So to get around that, and we can't get around it because it's going to take some work, but to start that process, first and foremost, you deserve to leave that in the past. You deserve to move on and not carry the weight of whatever it is with you into your relationships, into your life. You deserve to forgive someone, and you deserve to be forgiven. It may take some work for you to believe that you deserve that, but let us be the first to tell you that you deserve to leave that in the past and be free to move forward in your life and do all the great things that you want to do, that you will be able to do once you've set down the weight of the hurt and resentment that you've been holding on to.
So what are the things that someone would want to do in order to start letting go of those past hurts, the forgiveness, start to forgive someone or themselves for the past?
Well, for me, what I found to be the most effective way to forgive someone else and to forgive myself is to put myself back in that situation and find all the good that has come from it since. So the situation itself may be bad. It may have been a crappy situation, and whatever happened, it probably was because you hurt someone or you've been hurt, and so that sucks. But think of the dominoes that fell after that. What good came from it? Who are you now because of that? There's a lot of good things you can pull out of a bad situation because you wouldn't be you if you hadn't gone through it. So when I think of the difficult situations in my life, I wouldn't be me without having been hurt that way. I wouldn't have the compassion and empathy that I have today if I wasn't hurt like that. You can pull good things out of a bad situation. And for me, the only way I'm able to let go of the hurt and the pain and the resentment of a bad situation is to become really clear and really specific on all the ways that I have benefited. And you're going to tell me, I know I can hear people saying like, I haven't benefited. There's nothing good that's come from this. But there's always is. You just might have to dig a little deeper than the first surface answer.
But isn't it so true about all of the things that we talk about, all the bad things that go on, or quote unquote bad things that go on in life? It's like, no, but what do you have to be grateful? It all comes back to gratitude. What do you have to be grateful for? What was good about all of that? And it's the same here. It's like, what are the good things that happened as a result of that bad thing? Not condoning any of the bad behavior that happened in this situation that caused the pain, all of that. We're not condoning it. We're not saying that it was okay, because everything turned out fine. No, it's still bad. And it's still okay to know that and to not acknowledge that what they did was anything but.
Yeah.
However, what we are saying is that you want to move forward. You want to let it go. So what are the things that came out of that situation that you're grateful for? They made you stronger, that made you go down a different path, that led you to your superpower, that whatever it is, there is something. And to your point, you may have to dig a little, but there is something that came out of this that was a positive, and that's where you focus.
And I think just to be super duper clear, that we didn't talk about it earlier, is when you forgive someone, like we said, you're forgiving someone so that you can be free.
Yes.
We're not saying that just because you forgive them that you accept that what they did was okay. Yeah. It does not mean that you have given them permission to do what they've done, or that you've said that what they've done is okay. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you want to be free of it. Yeah. It does not condone their behavior, the other person's behavior at all. You forgive them so that you can be free. It is not a reflection of your permission or your acceptance of that.
And I think another way to really turn the corner and begin forgiving someone is to think of them as a child. Like, remember that they're a human being just like you, that they grew up just like you, and we don't know what their situation was growing up, what traumas that they've had, what situations made them the way they are, but they were once an innocent little child, just like you were. And if you envision them thinking of them as a little kid who is just trying to make their way in the world, do the best they can, would you hold a grudge against that little boy or girl?
Right.
And that works for you as well. Go back to when you were a little kid and just picture yourself as a little kid trying your best to make it in the world. And would you hold yourself or that little boy to that standard?
Yeah.
Knowing that they don't know any better. And so I think that that's a little trick on your mind that helps you get past some of this stuff.
One other method that I think is effective for helping you work your way to forgiveness for someone is there a story that you could tell yourself that would allow you to forgive this person? And you won't know whether it's true or false, but is there a story that you can make up about the situation that would make it easier for you to forgive someone?
And I don't think you're necessarily making it up as much as, is it plausible? Is it a potentially true story? Like, is it a story that is actually possibly, like, you're not necessarily making it up. It's just possible that this person didn't know that this would happen to me, or didn't know something. And is there some sort of story, something that you can believe? Because you have to be able to believe it.
Is there a version of reality that fills in the blanks of the story that you don't know? Is there a version of reality that would make it easier for you to forgive that person? If you could fill in all the blanks that would explain that person's behavior in a way that you could understand it and therefore make it easier to forgive yourself, write that story down.
The one that serves you.
Because that's the story that serves you. So write that story down and let that get you closer to forgiveness. Between that, the version of them as a child, and all the benefits that you have received from this situation, those 3 steps can be really effective in forgiveness.
Yeah. So as an example, I was friends with someone all growing up through school, and when we were like 14 or 15 years old, and I did this forgiveness work a while ago, but I wanted to just give an illustration of how this went for me. So I was buddies with this guy for growing up, and when he's 14, 15 years old, he's dating this girl, meet at the playground, have a kiss, go home, whatever. But he was with this girl, and they broke up. And I'm his friend. And so he's distraught. And so he's coming to me and telling me like, oh my God, she broke up with me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, ah. And I'm trying to make him feel better. 14, 15 years old. I know no better. Yeah, but you're not good for each other anyway. Like, you're better off. Like, trust me, this is better for you anyway. Now you can spend more time with us, hanging out, playing basketball, whatever.
Basically, I didn't like her anyway, so you're good.
Yeah, we're good. So a couple weeks later, they get back together, of course. And so that, like, rookie mistake, right? Like, you don't do that. As adults, we know that you
never do that.
Do not say that.
Yeah.
At 14, 15 years old, I did not know better. So I said it. A couple weeks later, they get back together. Remember, this is 14, 15. They go on and they're on again, off again, all the way through teens into their early 20s, on again, off again, broken up several times. They get back together. Eventually they get married. And wouldn't you know, at the wedding, his wife remembers when I was 14 that I said that about her and called it out at the wedding. I'm standing at the wedding. He's like, you know, and the guy gets up and he's
You're
telling...
a groomsman.
Yeah. And he tells the story about how there were people trying to keep them apart and like calls me out. And it was super embarrassing. And I'm like, come on. And we're like 24 now. It's been about 10 years. And I was livid inside. I was embarrassed to be called out in front of everyone. Like, I'm now the enemy for all these people who are there to celebrate their love and their union together. And now I'm the evil force that tried to keep them apart. And so, oh man, was I angry inside. I was angry at my buddy for allowing that to happen. I was angry for her. I was angry at her for still holding on to that. I was angry at him. I was angry at the guy who mentioned it. It's like, come on, we're holding this against me for 10 years? Anyways, and then years go by, and I held on to that for a long time. Like, I held a grudge against them. Like, I was
How
angry.
often did you talk to them in the next 15 years of your life?
I didn't. That was the last time I talked. Like, I left there and I never talked to them. And then a couple years ago, this forgiveness thing. And I realized that I went through this forgiveness exercise that we talked about, all of the different things, steps that we just outlined. I went through all of those and I pictured them as kids and all that stuff, and which wasn't hard because they basically were kids when I knew them. And I realized that the story that I told myself was, because I know I'm not going to get into airing dirty laundry and all the stuff that came on after, but I realized that, you know, they had each done some stuff that probably they were also not super pumped about themselves. Like, there was some stuff that went on that I think they both held
Between the two of them that they weren't proud of.
Yeah. But I think they needed a common enemy. They needed someone else to blame for, you know,
their difficulties,
the history leading up to the wedding, and it was me. And so that's the story I told myself, and I've actually truly firmly believe it now. And then I pictured them as kids growing up, and I remembered the good times that we've had and all those things, and I realized that it is what it is. I don't actually condone what they did. I think what they did was very immature, and it was very actually hurtful, but I've let it go. And it's not something that I actually think about anymore at all. Now, just given that we're talking about it, it brings it up, the work that I've actually done in the past. But it was interesting to think about that and to just let that go. Because, and I have actually no ill will. If I see them, I would love to like say hi, connect, whatever. But it's not like I'm going out of my way to go and look for them and like that sort of thing. It's in the past. It doesn't matter to me, but it was interesting to go through that exercise.
Right. So it was work that you did for your benefit.
Correct. Yeah. Because there was a little bit of anger there that it was causing me, I would say, thoughts and holding me back in other areas and potentially in other relationships that it's like, yeah, but what about...
Don't forget about what happens.
Remember what happened over here. You can't trust people. And so you just let that go. And you evaluate every relationship based on what's in front of you, not other people and not the past.
That's a really good story to illustrate that example.
That was
Thanks for sharing. I think the one last thing, especially for forgiving yourself, is mirror work. I think that's especially effective when you're trying to forgive yourself. And what we mean by mirror work is like every day going into the mirror, looking in the mirror, making eye contact with yourself in the mirror, smiling at yourself, saying, thank you, I love you, I'm sorry, I forgive you, you're forgiven. And saying that to yourself and meaning it when you look in your own eyeballs every day. And some days it's going to feel silly, and some days it's going to feel emotional, and some days you're going to feel angry, and you're going to feel all kinds of different things when you're looking in your own eyes and saying those things to yourself. But it's by doing that consistently over and over again that you will eventually believe yourself and actually forgive yourself. And so mirror work, I think, is a really important part of self-forgiveness. So acknowledging that you are asking for forgiveness and forgiving yourself. And I guess the one part that we didn't really touch on yet, and we won't go into it in any great detail because we already have a podcast episode on it, but apologies go really well with forgiveness. And so especially when you're in a relationship with someone, when you've done something that you know hurts them, apologize, and apologize sincerely. And if someone has apologized sincerely to you, then now the ball is in your court to forgive them. That's work that you have to do. And like we said, it may not happen right away. Most of the time, it doesn't happen right away. You have to put the work in to be able to forgive someone.
It may not happen right away. It may take some work, but do your best to forgive. And then once you do, it has to be left in the past. It can't be used as ammunition moving forward. Like it can't be something in a future argument. It can't be that, yeah, but remember when you did this thing to me? And it's like, yeah, but I thought you forgave me for that. You know, I apologize, remember? And you said, yeah, we're good. We're moving past. You have to leave it in the past. You cannot bring it up in the future because that breaks trust and that will whittle down your relationship even further.
Yeah. So when someone apologizes, they did the work to apologize. You now do the work to forgive, and once it's forgiven, it's in the past, never to be used as ammunition in an argument ever again.
Correct.
That's the relationship rules as far as that goes.
Yeah.
When someone does the apologizing and asks you for forgiveness, the ball is now in your court. It's work you have to do. It may not happen right away. You'll go through the 3 steps that we outlined and work on forgiving that person so that you can be free and move forward, and that includes forgiving yourself. And so this is a bit of a heavy episode, but I think forgiveness is such a critical tool in your relationship so that you can live in the moment in your relationship and live the life and have the relationship that you want to have, which is almost impossible to do when you're holding on to past hurt. So forgiveness is a really important step in your relationship, work for you to do so that you can have the relationship and life that you deserve. So, with that being said, back to our question to end the episode. Now that you've listened to this episode, what are you going to do differently? What's one step that you're going to take coming out based on what you learned in this episode?
Is there something that you need to forgive someone for or yourself for? And if there is, think about that and apply some of the steps that we talked about and see if you can get to a place where you can let that go and leave that in the past so that you can move forward, live in the here and now, and focus more on the future, building your dream life and your dream relationship.
And if there's anyone else in your life that you think would benefit from hearing a little bit more about forgiveness, why to do it, and how to do it, please share this episode with them. It will benefit your relationship, their relationships, all of it.
Until next time.
See you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Life, yes, you are.